In 1996, in the seemingly quiet town of Lismore, Australia, a brutal crime seeped through the cracks of normality. Margaret Cox, a 38-year-old woman, was found dead in her own home. The scene was disturbing. Her body showed clear signs of beating, and the environment appeared carefully manipulated to hide any traces. The case was quickly labeled an isolated murder and absorbed by the silence of the authorities. No witnesses, no footage, no apparent evidence. The kind of crime that seems to come from nowhere and disappear just as mysteriously. But time would not erase the brutality of that act. What the police didn't expect was that years later, buried details would resurface like ghosts, starving for justice, and the name of one man would echo in different stories, different towns, but always around unresolved tragedies. An invisible predator or mere coincidence? Today, nearly 3 decades later, Margaret Cox's name is remembered by few, but her case represents something larger, a pattern of negligence, of unheard voices, of connections buried by the rush to close reports. Iris Northam's words, discredited by the system, remain a cruel reminder that often the truth lies where no one wants to look. Frank Abbott remains a figure shrouded in mystery, moving between accusations and legal loopholes, and Margaret, like so many other victims, remains silent, still waiting for justice. We may never know exactly what happened that night, but every forgotten name, every overlooked clue builds a narrative far darker than any isolated crime. Narrative where the greatest enemy may not be the killer, but indifference. It wasn't until 2019, 23 years after the crime, that a forgotten voice broke the silence. Iris Northam, a woman with a history of mental instability, gave a surprising statement to the police. She claimed to have seen Margaret Cox at the home of a man named Frank Abbott the day before the murder. Iris described specific details of the house, Margaret's clothing, and even their conversation. She also said she saw Abbott return home with scratches on his neck and face. However, the police dismissed the testimony, labeling Iris as inconsistent and unreliable. What few knew was that Frank Abbott had previously been convicted of sexual crimes and was, that same year, being investigated for the disappearance of another child, William Tyrrell. The coincidence seemed too grotesque to ignore, yet it was. Iris faded back into anonymity, and once again silence prevailed. The last time Margaret Cox was seen alive was on a Tuesday afternoon. Witnesses said she seemed nervous, as if she were avoiding someone. That night, neighbors reported muffled noises coming from her house, but no one called the police. When her body was finally discovered, horror had already taken hold. The victim lay on the living room floor with extensive bruises and signs of struggle. Yet the most frightening thing was what wasn't there. No fingerprints, no objects out of place, no clear signs of forced entry. Investigators claimed she knew her attacker, but with no physical or digital evidence, the investigation quickly went cold. The case was shelved like so many others, swallowed by an overloaded and uninterested system. No one was arrested, no one held accountable, and Margaret became a silent statistic in the archives of forgetfulness. Today, nearly 3 decades later, the name Margaret Cox is remembered by few. But her case represents something far greater, a pattern of negligence, of voices ignored, of connections buried beneath the rush to close reports. The words of Iris Northam, discredited by the system, remain a cruel reminder that more often than not, the truth lies where no one wants to look. Frank Abbott remains a figure shrouded in mystery, slipping between accusations and legal loopholes. And Margaret, like so many other victims, remains silent, still waiting for justice. Perhaps we will never know exactly what happened that night, but every forgotten name, every overlooked clue, builds a narrative far darker than any isolated crime. A narrative where the greatest enemy may not be the killer, but indifference.